afternoon to everyone. First of all, thank you so much for joining our live webinar today, where we've partnered with LinkedIn to talk about recruitment marketing for diversity recruiting. I'm Amiksha Patel, Senior Director of Brand Strategy here at Fairy Godboss. And for those of you who are not familiar with Fairy Godboss, we are an employer branding and recruitment marketing solution that really helps companies attract, engage, and hire professional and technical women. Through our platform, we offer a variety of free resources to our users, like our anonymous company reviews, our job board, articles on career advice, virtual events, webinars, and so much more to really help companies enhance their employer brand and develop diversity-focused recruitment strategies and build diversity pipelines. We do partner with over 150 plus enterprise organizations like LinkedIn, who we love, Apple, Johnson & Johnson, Deloitte, Home Depot, Google, and more. And we have over 15 million women engaging with our platform. Again, really being part of a company whose social mission is to empower and improve the lives of women in the workplace, I really feel honored to be hosting this topic today and partnering with LinkedIn to discuss how they actually help recruit underrepresented talent. So before we get started on this exciting conversation and intros, I want to mention a few things. This webinar is going to be recorded, and we will be emailing the recording after the event. Also, I see the amazing chat kind of going on right now from where everyone is. So that's really fantastic to see. But if anyone does have any questions for us, please feel free to place them in the chat, and we will do our best to kind of answer as many as possible at the end of this session. Also, I will be making a special announcement at the end of the session, so stay tuned. All right, so now, honestly, I'd really like to get things started, and I want to be starting by introducing two amazing, phenomenal women from LinkedIn who are joining me today. So I have Lauren Saunders, Head of Talent Attraction at LinkedIn, and I have Lonnie Olazaba, Director of Inclusion and Recruiting at LinkedIn. And Lauren, I'll let you start by sharing a brief intro on your story, and then over to Lonnie to do the same.
Thank you so much, Amiksha. We're really excited to be here with you guys today. Lonnie and I are partners in crime as part of the talent acquisition team here at LinkedIn. And so really excited to get to do this with Lonnie, which is even better. My team leads up our talent attraction effort as part of the overall innovation and solutions team that sits within the talent acquisition group. And what that means to be doing talent attraction is everything from our employer branding, recruitment marketing, and our strategic sourcing channels, which include things like, our employee referral program, as well as some of the other key tentpole events and projects that we do across the recruiting team. So everything from our social media presence of LinkedIn Life to what we do when we do targeted media campaigns for talent, to building out specific content that might be needed for our careers website, and then right down to how we show up at key events. That's where my team does a lot of the activation, which ties in really nicely with the great work that Lonnie and her team does. My background is actually in marketing and communications originally, and then I kind of migrated into the recruiting side, was in recruiting for a while, and HR. Has spent most of my career in financial services before I came to LinkedIn, but I've been here for 2 years and absolutely loving it. So really excited to chat to you guys today and share a little bit about our experience.
Awesome. Lonnie.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm so excited and elated to be here. Again, Lanio Introduction. I'm Director of Inclusion Recruiting at LinkedIn. I'm also finishing a 2.5-year tenure of co-chair of our employee resource group, Hola. So hola, mi gente, have to give a shout out there. Inclusion recruiting, we really focus on all of the great work that our company does around diversity, inclusion, and belonging as a whole, and how it relates to the TA function, ensuring that we are inclusive in all of our hiring practices from the time someone looks at our our website and applies for a job, to the conversations that they have internally, how they're evaluated in their interviewing process, selected, and then onboarded, as well as retention. So when you think about the full picture, that is what inclusion recruiting does. Really excited to be here with you all. And again, the partnership with Lauren is so critical. And I'm really just excited to express and talk about all of this goodness and this movement that we have going on in the corporate world.
Wow, I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you both. And welcome to you two beautiful ladies. And now I'd really like to just start off by asking you, Lonnie, like, why did you get involved in this work?
Yeah, thank you so much. I love this question because I think that especially when we're thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, bringing it back to your personal experience is so critical and it's so fundamentally important. So I've been at LinkedIn for 9 years. I'm what we call a LinkedIn dinosaur. 7.5 years of my tenure at LinkedIn was in engineering recruiting, led a phenomenal team there. As I progressed in my DIBS journey, I became co-chair of OLA. And for me, it was an awakening of the opportunity to demonstrate inclusivity in the workplace and my role in that and what that means. I also have a lived experience. I'm a brown skinned girl. I'm multicultural. I come from a non-traditional background. So I had an obligation to myself. I watched myself grow in what I did in my career. And I thought that everybody deserves that opportunity. And what can I do to help ensure that that happens? LinkedIn is an amazing organization that supports that and believes in it fundamentally. So I had the opportunity to jump into the role and I get paid to do what I love and to move this movement forward of inclusivity in the workplace and helping all of us just reach our full, potential in the spaces that we wish to. So that's why I decided to focus on this work. It's fundamentally important to me personally, as well as professionally.
Great, love that. And, honestly, I'd like to kind of start at the beginning, as I know we have attendees from various backgrounds today, and it would be really great to share what is the difference between employer branding and recruitment marketing. And Lauren, I'd love for you to kick this off.
Yeah, of course. So I think as we see it, the employer brand piece is really how job seekers perceive your company and your reputation as a company, specifically as it pertains to being a place of employment. So it's different to the company brand while very connected. It's intrinsically tied, as I like to say, to both the company brand and your culture and values, but the two are not mutually exclusive. And that's a really important point. There are often cases where there are brands that you like and admire from a consumer perspective, but you may not wish to work for them. And so it's really important that we do make that distinction and difference between employer brand and company brand. And then I also like to make that distinction, as you have here, Amiksha, with regards to employer brand versus recruitment marketing. So while the employer brand is that perception and the brand that you have in the eyes of job seekers, the recruitment marketing is really the practice of using marketing strategies against your employer brand to activate it and get it out there and reach talent. So you can sort of think of it as the employer brand is the what, and the recruitment marketing is the how. How do you take that to market? How do you get it in front of people? And how do you make sure people understand who you are and what you have to offer, both from a benefits perspective, but also culture and values and what the work is that you do and the products that you sell and your mission as a company. There's so many aspects that kind of go into making a great employer brand. And a great employer brand is the key ingredient for having a really great recruitment marketing effort.
Great. And, and maybe to kind of back up on that, like how, knowing that they kind of work together, how important would you say the two, employer branding and recruitment marketing, are for diversity efforts? And what is LinkedIn and your teams doing in working together? And maybe Lonnie, you can kind of expand on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a great question. And, I think it's also fundamentally important that when you're thinking about branding and recruitment marketing, that your voice in your company is represented in its entirety, right? And so understanding that individuals who come from, underrepresented groups or different backgrounds, in order to feel attracted to a company, you have to be able to see that you can be seen there, or that there's a place for you there, right? So in order to approach that, thinking about employee branding and recruitment marketing, how do we show up externally? Are we really showing the greatness greatness that's within the company. You know, within LinkedIn, we have our organization is structured to where we have focus on the importance in inclusion. We're in it every day working, but externally it's not always seen, right? So how do you bring that out? How do you showcase all of the goodness that's happening in the day-to-day within the organization in a way that's going to attract and engage those who can look at that and say, wow, I see myself there. I can be there. I want to work on that. I want to do what they're doing. I want to be a part of that movement. Dang, Lonnie looks pretty cool. I want to hear more about what she's got going on there, right? So how can we bring our personality and bring the energy that we have within the organization outward without individuals necessarily actually applying just immediately or going through an interview process, because prospects might just be exploring, right? Right now, we all know there's a high market of talent, opportunity. And so anybody can work anywhere. And if you have any skills, you're even that much more marketable, right? So you have opportunity to really look at fundamentally, what is the company doing? How are they showing up? And what role can I play in what they're doing? And do I believe? And so it's very critically important that employers and within recruitment marketing, that you showcase that and you make it very clear and that people can be seen and the work can be done there so that there is buy-in and lean in, even at the exploratory phase, right? So when the decision is made, when the time is right, you are employer of choice. That's what it strives to do, is really we want to show who we are and what we're all about. And we want to attract those that agree with that and that want to be a part of it and that feel that place of belonging with us. So that's, I think, what's really important about the two and how it relates to diversity and the importance of inclusion in that way.
Yeah, and Lonnie, what I would add to that, you're seeing all people you know in the chat. I love it. What I would add to that, Lonnie, is to your point, like if we could be the best company for diversity in the world, we could have the best, most inclusive policies and all these things. If we don't tell people about it, how are they going to know? Especially if they're not already working there. So that kind of broadcast aspect is so critical to make sure that people get in there. But I also like to think of, the role of employer brand and recruitment marketing, to some of the points Lonnie was making, is not only to attract people, but also to help people realize if that's not the right place for them. Our recruiting teams get a lot of applications, and the better we can get to the candidates who this is the right home for them and they're going to be really successful here and have an excellent, fulfilling career, that's really important as well. So it's equally as important that your employer brand and the story you tell is very authentic and credible for the organization. Because if you attract somebody with something that is not true to who you are, and then they come in the door and that's not the experience that makes sense for them, that can be a really damaging experience for their career. And so we also have an obligation in terms of how we're showcasing that, to keep that authenticity, to help the right candidates get through the process and make the right decisions for themselves, particularly when it comes to diverse candidates. LinkedIn actually has some good research around, candidates and the touch points it takes to attract them. And so we know that most candidates, it can take them up to 14 touch points to actually convert into an applicant for a role. And so as you think about your strategies, particularly for attracting diverse candidates, where we know that female candidates and underrepresented groups often take longer to convert and can sometimes need a little more lead time, because of some insecurities they may feel about making that move and other things they're trying to juggle in their personal life. There's a lot of really interesting research on those facts, but I think the most important part is understanding those and then working out how do we apply that when we think about our recruitment marketing strategy and make sure that we're giving people the information they need to make the right decisions for them, which ultimately means the right hires for us.
Wow, love that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing those insights. And to kind of get a little more granular here, kind of continuing on that topic, obviously being the head of talent attraction, Lauren, and Director of Inclusion and Recruiting, Lonnie, how do both your teams collaborate together to really ensure that the messaging, the timing, and the outreach is effective? So would love some insights there.
Yeah, well, I've been in my role about a year and a half now, and early on, it was very clear that Lauren was going to be my partner in crime, and that we would be very connected in what we do. And I think it is so critical. You know, examples of this that I would give is, you know, how we're showing up externally to the communities that we seek to hire and how we're reaching underrepresented communities. Our external partners, for an example, you know, we invest in establishing relationships with communities and engaging. With that, there are areas of marketing and media that is available, along with the opportunity to, you know, have events and engage with the communities in different ways and access the communities. So Lauren and I our teams work really hand in hand to ensure that our narrative is consistent and, you know, that we're not over, you know, engineering it. We are, you know, being our authentic selves. We're working together to say, we know that there's greatness within this organization. How are we showing up and how are we leveraging the resources and the partnerships that we have in order to do so? So when we go into partnership agreements, we go together. You know, we look at overall, what are the offerings that a partnership offers? And then what role does Lauren's team play in talent attraction? What role does inclusion recruiting team play? And TA and the like. So we create that connective tissue. Another area of core focus is internally, right? With our ERGs, our internal communities. You know, we want to be able to have the voice be heard, as I said, you know, of who we are internally to attract and engage the talent that is right for LinkedIn. And so Lauren and I, our team really partners very closely in leveraging our media assets and all of our resources, but also to ensure that we are allowing the voice of our internal communities to showcase themselves and to speak to all the greatness. So, you know, really being intentional, I think, in every approach to attracting and engaging and how we're showing up is very important that Lauren and I's team stays connected. Lauren, would you agree?
100%, Lonnie. I mean, and I think that intentionality is the biggest part of it. Like, I think, you know, often you have teams, and I've worked in them in the past, where you might have a group of specialists who are focused around recruitment marketing and therefore have a recruitment background, but aren't connected to those IR specialists that Lonnie's team has. And so, you know, you're then devoid of that expertise that helps you to understand what is the right tone, what is the right language, how do we reach out to these underrepresented groups and make sure that what we're doing is not seen as offensive, honestly, you know, and is really inclusive and thoughtful in how we go to market. So that's really critical in the messaging and how we do it. But I think as well, you know, the other part, as I think of my team and the role that we play, it's important that we're not just focused on attraction as a blanket statement without diversity as being part of that. It is part of everything we do. It can't be something we do in parallel. It can't be something we do off to the side. It can't be something we tack on at the end. We have to literally think of diversity in every activation we do, every campaign we run, and every asset we deliver to candidates. If it's not, then the message can get lost very quickly. And it's part of the fabric of who we are as a company. So then we're not doing a good job of delivering on our employer brand. So I think that criticality of having it really woven into the strategy, and then the two teams working very much hand in hand to make sure that the execution is on point, is kind of the magic sauce that we feel like we're getting into a great stride on here at LinkedIn.
Wow, that's fabulous. And I love that collaboration, and it's so key. So thank you. So the next question is obviously around, you know, so many of our customers are in historically male-dominated industries like tech, finance, even gas and energy. So what would be your best advice for those companies and others who want to attract women and underrepresented candidates? Like, are there any extra education or partnerships you would advise to help them with?
Yeah, this is a really great question as well. And I think that, you know, one of the big call outs is, I think in this day and age, it's hard not to be educated and not to, you know, pay attention to what's going on. But I do think that intentionality is very important. So step one is understand where you are in your journey. You know, where are you as a professional and where are you personally? That's fundamentally important. What do you know and what do you not know? And then to the point that is made, I think that education and always be learning is so critical. So seek to understand, join organizations. You know, LinkedIn, we have platform and space where you can learn about diversity, equity, and inclusion as it relates to the workforce, as it relates to in general. So I would say engulf yourself in understanding and the learnings resources that are available there is critically important. I also think another great way is partnerships. Learning from partnerships like Fairy Godboss, learning from organizations that are dedicated to this cause and understand the why and understand the how that is there, critically important. I think that would definitely help the evolution and putting into perspective. It takes a bit of change management, to be quite honest. If you're, not really accustomed to thinking a certain way, because to the point we're saying, historically male-dominated industries, if that's what we know, then how do we fix that? Then it's okay to not know, but it's okay to not know and seek to understand and to get to the reasonings as to the why and to the how and how to fix it. I think that's so critically important. The other thing I'll say is, again, my journey catapulted because I joined ERG at LinkedIn. I got in with my internal community, the people that I can relate to. There are many allies that are actually engaged into the ERGs as well. Get active, get involved with the people, both in your current company, and externally. The more you are engaged with the community and you get to know people and you understand the different perspectives, the better you're going to be able to relate to it. And then in everything that you do, you apply that. When it says diversity, inclusion, and belonging needs to be a part of everything you do, well, you have to relate to it first. So you have to engulf yourself, engage, be open, learn, build relationships, root yourself. And then with that comes the journey of understanding the perspective and then applying your own perspective to it from there.
Wow. I can't even add anything to that. Lonnie just nailed that one.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, and the next one's around candidate personas. Like, in order to understand target candidates, what type of messaging and the outreach strategies are needed to connect with these various segments in the population, we know that creating candidate personas can help. So what would be your best advice for how companies can put these together? And what were some of the resources that you found helpful? And maybe Lauren, you can start there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, definitely personas are a common marketing tactic to really understand your audience. So I think it's almost a follow on to some of the stuff Lonnie was just talking about, is how do you educate yourself, gather the information, understand the needs of the candidates and the folks that you're going after. And that's what the exercise of building personas is, right? Is doing that research, diving in, asking questions, getting to know people. Your employees are the most valuable resource in that moment. Speak to new hires, understand what did they wish they knew? Where were they looking when they were looking for a job? Get to know some of that. And then don't forget that your recruiters know a lot more than they let on. They are an amazing source of knowledge. They are the front line. They are talking to these candidates every day. So use recruiters and the intelligence that they have to help you gather that information on what people are looking for. The reason personas are so powerful is it helps to define the audience that you're really going after. And so as you're writing content, it's very easy, for us as individuals with the biases we have to write content for ourselves. But we're not trying to attract ourselves, are we? We're trying to attract a really diverse, broad group of amazing talent. And so it's really critical, in the same way as we check our unconscious biases going into an interview, for example. You need to check your biases as you're going into writing content or developing marketing materials. And the best way to do that is to really get in the mindset of the person who the materials is being designed for. So understand the audience that you're interested in, that you're going after and you're planning to target. Write that down on a piece of paper. Your persona development can be as fancy or as simple as you would like to make it. You can really go down a very academic path of building out a whole PowerPoint deck of amazing personas. But you can also write it on the back of a napkin and sit at your desk and just kind of doodle out what are the things you've heard people talk about, what are the things that is interesting to those candidates, and then how do I bring that to the fore? Gather the information that makes sense for them. But really, there are a lot of free tools online if you wanted to use a template to get you started for the first couple of times. I also like to say to folks that personas can be a bit of a deep rabbit hole of like, how many, none of us are recruiting for one profile. So how many personas do you build? Where do you start? Well, you start with the most common denominator. If the role that you hire for most is at this level, in that location, et cetera, build a persona that makes sense for that. And then what you can do is add layers to that persona or take away attributes of that persona as it makes sense to use it in different candidate profile audiences. So take a look online. There's loads of free tools out there. I believe there's even some LinkedIn learning courses that talk about persona development that you could reference if you guys have access to that. But really, you're really understanding what is it about that candidate that motivates them? What are the core needs? Where are they spending their time? What are the things that create pain for them in a recruiting process? And how do we take away that? So it's really powerful both for the recruiter to use as they're thinking about the recruiting process and selling and nurturing candidates. And it's really important for us as we think of the top of funnel attraction efforts and how do we make sure the content we're doing is relevant.
Yeah, again, not much to add there. Lauren's obviously an expert in that space, mic drop. The one thing I would add is, also with the personas, think about, the non-traditional background. Think about individuals, be able to tweak your personas a little bit, go a little bit rogue, if you will, and think about, how people with underrepresented groups, what they're looking at and how they're approaching, think about non-traditional backgrounds and how maybe a persona tweak might be, needed in order to attract and engage, that audience. So just a little plug to diversify a little bit when you're thinking about personas and take intelligent risks, as we like to say at LinkedIn, that could render, a broader talent pool.
And I love both of that. I love the just jotting down on a napkin, because sometimes I think we overthink how to put these together. And so I love that, Lauren. And I love the whole, just being kind of out of the box, Lonnie, like you said, and looking at it in a different approach. So thank you. And so my next question is, obviously, we all know that when we're developing messaging, that is essential, but content distribution is really also extremely important. At Fairy Godboss, we obviously are a targeted recruitment marketing platform that really helps companies attract female candidates across the web, social, digital, events, and more. So what would be your best advice for companies looking to outreach, to enhance their outreach strategies?
Yeah, I would say to really have a look at what you have today, and then what are the gaps that you might see in terms of the people that you're trying to attract. So start again with those personas. Who's your audience? Who are you going after? And then how do you think you're doing in reaching that total addressable market that's out there for those candidate profiles? As we build our channel strategy for LinkedIn talent attraction, we like to think of it with the 3 R's. So that is reach, resonance, and reaction. And so we try and build our strategy to make sure we're hitting each of those, reach in the sense of like, where do these candidates live? So how do we show up in the places where they live, and how do we help them to see the information about us when they're operating on a day-to-day basis? How do we make sure that we're working with partner organizations like Fairy Godboss, knowing that women live in this ecosystem and you have an incredible member base? How do we make sure that for every audience that we're reaching out to, we've got presence so that they can find us without having to dig too deep? As we think of resonance, it's how does the stuff that we put out there make sense to them? Does it attract people? Is it interesting? Does it, do they understand who we are when they read the tagline that we put in our one post or whatever it might be? Is the content we're sharing, if we're nurturing candidates, relevant, or is it like, why do I care about that? Is a recruiter sending me an email and reaching out to share something and I'm like, that's nice, like I don't really care? Is it kind of relevant to me? And then reaction, what are those touch points, and how do we make sure that when we get the reach, and when the content resonates, how do we make sure that then they actually do what we want them to do and make an application or convert to a hire? So we're kind of thinking about really building out an ecosystem that provides the information that brings the candidates where they are, the information that they're looking for, regardless of the point in time that they're at in their journey. Because we have to remember there's the active candidate audience and the passive candidate audience. And that's also really important in building the strategy. You don't want to just hit on active candidates and just be living in your application system, or just be living in the job board, kind of space only. You really need to be out there listening and operating where the candidates live on a day-to-day basis. Where are they spending time actively absorbing information and learning about roles? Really important to hit both touch points, because candidates may not even realize that they're interested in a role with you. They might think they're happy where they are until they see the better offer. So really important that we have that better offer right in front of them whenever they're ready to make that call.
Great. Lonnie, anything to add there?
Yeah, no, another mic drop for Lauren, y'all. That's definitely well said. Totally agree. And I think that that is the important part, is the outreach should be a story of, if the time is not right now, that's okay. But we want to share with you information to an insight so that when the time is right, we are employer of choice, or we are considered as an employer of choice. That's, I think, the intent of a good outreach strategy.
Yeah, Lonnie and I have often said to our recruiters we did some training together on nurture efforts, and did some training with our recruiting team to help them understand how to nurture candidates over a period of time. And we liken it to our sales organization, right? You might do your first cold call very early on in the process, but actually you don't just, if they say, oh, that's fine, I'm not looking now, if they're an excellent candidate or an excellent client, you don't just say, okay, great, and never call them again, do you? And so we got to think of recruiting in a similar way. How do we act as marketers and salespeople, and how do we constantly go back and, make sure that we're delivering value when we do that? We're not saying annoy your candidates and spam them. That's not the point. It's how do we make sure we understand what that candidate's needs are, what they're interested in, where are they right now in that journey, and what might be interesting things that we could share with them that add value to them in their career until the point in time that they're ready to make a conversion onto your team.
Yeah. Yeah. And relationship building, right? That's the other point that's so critical. The fundamental, we are humans, and relatability is key. And if you can build relationships over time, it's, hey, I remember that belonging moment with that outreach, and I remember that point of engagement. So when I am at a point of looking at a career move, I'm going to go to that, what resonates with me and where I have relationships. So at whatever level, establish that relationship, I think, is critical.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love that, because relationship is critical. And I love the 3 R's that you shared, Lauren, and how separating kind of the active versus the passive too, and just kind of making it unique to a candidate. So great. So I know the next question is probably going to be on everyone's mind. And we know, it's around metrics and data. And so we know how important metrics and data is to recruiting. But, when it comes to diversity recruiting, it can be challenging to track and how to do that. So what are some of the goals that each of your teams have? And how do you, what are some of the metrics you measure? And, I'd love to hear more about your KPIs. And is there any specific metrics that are not specifically helpful when you're doing kind of D&I reports? So would love a better understanding and background of what LinkedIn's doing there.
Yeah, and I can jump in and start. I think as we think of it, to your point, Amisha, it's a really challenging space, honestly, to do metrics, because there's so much, understandably, data privacy and stuff that we have to be really respectful around as we talk about diversity specifically. So it's really important that you understand, and work with your legal teams or whoever else you need guidance from if you're setting up a program like this, especially to understand what you can or can't do, because there are some things that are very binary in terms of you cannot measure that when it comes to diversity because of the respect and privacy for EO data. So it's important that folks understand that as we think of, the campaigns we run in our talent attraction program, specifically at LinkedIn, we report really on campaign data, but not candidates. So, we think of it in aggregate. We're not saying that this woman came from this campaign. We're saying that, we did a campaign targeted to women and it generated this many hires. I can't tell you if they're women or males. So we're often, we do have to neutralize that because we have to be very careful about the data privacy aspect of it. It still gives us some excellent results though, and we can do a good job at measuring return on investment. We call it influenced hire is the metric that we tend to gravitate around. And what we're really focused on there is looking at when we reach out to audience with a targeted media campaign, for example. If we run a post, we look at the target audience. If that target audience is 1,000 people, how many people of those 1,000 people saw the post? And then how many people, to measure. So that's kind of the quantity aspect, and did we hit that reach aspect? And then to measure your resonance and reaction, you're looking further down the recruiting funnel. So you're trying to understand then, if you can connect your posts in with your ATS data. We do that at LinkedIn. We have it aggregated at a top level, and we're able to see through tracking pixels when a candidate passes through the process of advertising. So in the same way you do kind of advertising for companies, we can do that with recruitment marketing these days. What I would say is where it gets a little challenging is targeting. There are a lot of limitations on who you can target, but if you really go broad with your audience and understand what good conversion might look like over time, if you measure that and can measure it consistently, you can start to see averages. So you start to see where you're above or below the line on your campaigns, and that's how you can start to optimize and understand success.
Great. And Lonnie, anything to add there?
Yeah, and on the recruiting side, I appreciated the mention of this being a challenging topic when you're thinking about numbers and how it relates to hiring, a diverse set of talent. And so one of the things that for LinkedIn, we do have an intentional process, which is our diverse slates program. This is our systematic approach to ensuring that we have a diverse slate of talent at the on-site interview stage prior to making a hiring decision. So having that in place is that, kind of that North Star. And I think that gauge and helps with, the guidance and the structure of what I think is fundamentally important, which is the intentionality and how do we ensure that we are being intentional in our efforts so that the rendering results are automatically and organically there. So, we have the program of diverse slates. Our recruiters are able to gauge, at the stage of an on-site, if a diverse talent pool is there and make the agreement with the hiring manager to proceed or to continue, the search to ensure that there is a diverse slate of talent. So I think that is a good checkpoint, and it's a good place, for ensuring that there is inclusivity in the process. However, I go back to there should be that intentionality from the beginning, from the job description, from an intake that a recruiter has with a hiring manager. The time to fill and the time that's going to be invested in ensuring that there's a diverse, talent pool available. The market of where they're going to look for, the engagement of the hiring manager, as we mentioned, the relationships and getting into the communities and how we are going to, approach that from to attract individuals for the role, ensuring that the interviewing process is inclusive, ensuring that the decision-making process is inclusive, the hiring process is inclusive, all the above. I think that intentionality, that fundamental, having the right narrative, having the right understanding, and being intentional in every step of the process will organically manifest the numbers or the metric that you're looking for, right? I also think it's really important that leadership, the highest level of leadership, be aligned on what the goal is, on the intentionality to hire a diverse set of talent for your organization. And then have that be the resounding echoing that cascades all the way through down to the recruiter who's having the conversation with the candidates. So we do have the mechanism of the systematic approach to ensuring we have a diverse slate of talent in the talent pool. But I really want to encourage us, you guys, to focus more on the fundamentals of the intentionality of this work, the movement of this work. And if we are all locked and aligned on the importance of it and giving the right time and the right investment into ensuring that we have an inclusive hiring process and a diverse talent that we look to hire every time, then the numbers will reach themselves. And I fundamentally believe that.
Wow. Love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that is great insight on how you guys do it there. So as we kind of, I come to the last question before we get to Q&A, what would be one parting thought that both of you would like to leave with us today? And, Lauren, go ahead and start that.
It's hard to say one, I'll be honest. What I would say is for those of us that have the pleasure of doing the jobs like Lonnie and I do, we are very lucky in what we do. And so let's, to Lonnie's point, be intentional about how we use that power and think through what impact we can make, not only on our own workplaces, but for the purposes of Fairy God Boss audience of females, like women around the world or other underrepresented groups, right? How do we make sure that we use the moments that matter to really create that impact? And honestly, that's kind of the ethos of LinkedIn as a company is, creating economic opportunity for the global workforce. And so we really bring that spirit into everything we do, but I don't think that's something that can be unique to LinkedIn. I think everyone has an opportunity to make such an impact. And I think it's the role of us as professionals in HR, recruitment marketing, wherever you sit, whether it's marketing, comms, or HR, to kind of bring that to the bear in all the work we do on a daily basis and be really inclusive in how we approach it.
Love that. Lonnie?
Yeah, and what I would say, the parting words I would say is definitely, start with where you are. Encourage everyone to self-check in. Where are you in your DIBS journey? And understand yourself. Be okay to not have all the answers. Be okay to question things. That is okay. Be authentic, be open, be vulnerable. These are the things that if you open yourself up in that way, you will learn more and you'll understand more. And you're also going to be able to track others that feel that same way. And so that's where I would say, understand your journey, be authentic, be vulnerable, get involved with your employee resource groups within your organizations, get involved with communities externally, get involved on LinkedIn platform, get involved with Fairy Godbows, learn and grow, build relationships with people, understand the differences that each of us have and what we all bring and the magic in that. And then help encourage it. I think fundamentally, if we can just get that right and we can build relationships and always be learning and always be growing together, staying confident and understanding that, hey, I don't know this all. I don't have it all figured out. This is intense. Those conversation is, I don't even know how to answer that question, but that's okay. Hiding from it or making it uncomfortable is not okay. Being vulnerable and authentic and brave, and where you are in your journey and respectful of where others are in theirs, and then finding those unity points. And in everything that you do, think about inclusivity for humanity and just doing the right thing. LinkedIn, we have a culture tenet, which is doing the right thing, operating with integrity. Put that lens on everything you do, and you're going to be all right. Practice some yoga too, because it's fun.
Wow. Honestly, you gave me goosebumps. That's just, I love that. And I really appreciate that. And honestly, my takeaway thought today is really that, diversity of recruiting is consistently evolving and you don't know everything. And when you think you know everything, you really don't. As today, both of you just taught me so much and, shared so many new insights. So I really appreciate that. And I love that and just being authentic in yourself. So thank you. And
thank you, Mikshas. You have been amazing. I just got to give you a plug. You've made this conversation flow so nicely, and I love your great energy. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I know that we still have 15 minutes, so I want to make sure to take a few moments to ask some questions. We have a lot of questions out there. So I'm going to go ahead and ask some of the questions from our viewers that, we can help answer. So just give me a second and I will love to kind of ask both of you some of these. So one of the questions from our viewers was, how do you balance sharing stories of underrepresented talent versus tokenizing people?
Yeah, love that. That's so critically important. Thank you for that question, because there's a fine line, to be very honest. So within LinkedIn, something that we did with that my team led with the ERG engagement program that is closely partnered with Lauren's team is we took the time to understand from our ERG volunteers how they want to get involved. Right. So we offered an opportunity of different areas that we see how they could engage with TA's initiatives. Right. So things like, do you want to share content? Do you want to create content and share content that is your voice about your ERG and about your lived experience? That content in partnership with Lauren's team, we showcase and we amplify. There might be the opportunity of, hey, do you want to share your story in a more one-on-one setting? So do you want to talk to a candidate or a prospect about your personal journey and about, your ERG? Or there's another option is, hey, we know that you probably have a wonderful, diverse network, and we would love to reach talent like you. So as a recruiter, would you like to partner with the recruiter? And would you allow a recruiter to look within your network with you and identify talent that you might be connected to who we're looking to engage with? And can you help us reach out to them? So examples of giving a variety of opportunities for ERG members to get involved. fundamentally important, right? Because you want to be able to ensure that you are amplifying the voice of the people and not tokenizing the people. You know, the overarching is we want to have a diverse talent pool, and we want to hire diverse people that are reflective for LinkedIn of our member base. That's our fundamental truth, right? So we want to do that. And if anyone wants to embrace the opportunity to help us with that, where do they feel comfortable doing so? Right. And then also ensuring that you're not over tapping people, you know, be very strategic and be very intentional. But again, I go back to those human factors of just having compassion and understanding where people are and understanding, hey, if Lonnie was reached out to already, and that's the other thing that we have within our program, is knowing who's involved and knowing how many times we've reached out to them, right? So being very intent about knowing and not over tapping, and, you know, sharing the wealth of being able to broad showcase information.
Wow, great. Love that. Thank you. And what can either of you maybe expand on the 14 touch points to candidates comment that was made?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about that. I think that as you think of a candidate journey, they're not really just going to one source. So, you know, it used to be the case that maybe once upon a time we opened a newspaper and we saw a job and we gave them a phone call. That's not how the world works today with the wealth of information at people's fingertips. And so what we think of as we think about the various touch points is that we know that it takes somebody 14 different moments to see pieces of information about a job or a company before they feel like they have some kind of brand affiliation when it comes to employer brand. And so what that could mean is perhaps they see something in the news feed on LinkedIn. Perhaps they see the job posted on Fairy Gold Boss. Perhaps they look at some of the employer reviews and the things that people have posted about their experience working there. Each of these moments, you know, they get an email from a recruiter. Each of these moments are a different touch point. And so the form of those touch points can be incredibly varied. For some people, if they're not actively looking, it may just be the paid advertising that ends up in their feeds for a period of time before they then go seeking the information and turn into an active candidate. But for people who are active candidates, we know they're out there really looking up all sorts of information. And so it's important that, I think Lonnie mentioned earlier, the concept of consistency. It's often the case that if you're showing up in a way that is inauthentic in terms of the content that you put out there, you know, and to the conversation we were just having about, you know, how do you kind of ensure you're not tokenistic? I've seen it done where it's been companies where, you know, they only have images of all women or all underrepresented groups as their pictures as part of their careers website. That is not what that company looks like, and nobody's believing that it does. So you've got to have it representing who you are and be really credible in how you go to market, because there are ways for people to sense check you these days. And those reviews are the perfect way. It might be great if we have this beautiful story telling of all these things that we do. If you then have an employee that says that's complete BS, your story means nothing and you've wasted all your time. So I think it's really understanding the full breadth of where the candidate journey looks these days and how they operate in a candidate marketplace that's all digital with a lot of access to information.
Wow, I love that. And perception is reality. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so love that. And I know that obviously, you know, when I kind of make my special announcement, it's related to reviews, so that we'll get to that then. But a couple more questions. I know we have a lot. Sorry if we can't get to them all. But where does ownership of recruitment marketing sit in organizations, with talent acquisition or with the external communications marketing team?
Yeah, so our team sits within talent acquisition. And for us, that feels like the right home for a number of different reasons. I have in my career seen it done both ways. And I don't actually believe that there is a right or wrong answer. I think it's what is right for you and your organization and how equipped you are. What it does mean is either way, depending on where you sit, you have to be very connected and intentional in the relationships you build with the organization you are not rolling up into. So my team has kind of the responsibilities for TA to have a really close-knit partnership with our marketing and comms team. We align to them on best practices, policies, processes, tools, all those good things, just to make sure that we're in lockstep. But for us, it's been incredibly beneficial having Lonnie, her team, and all the recruiting teams as our immediate day-to-day family that we work with on the constant, because that keeps the close proximity to the particular audience that we're actually going after. So for us, that's been the right home, but I would say there's no right or wrong answer there. But it's a matter of making the relationship work either way, depending on where you put it.
Great, thank you. And one last question. Can you explain what you mean by the Rooney Rule? And is there a better metric or a percentage to use?
Yeah, so the Rooney Rule is actually, if you look it up online, it is, the NFL's guidance towards ensuring, again, that diversity is there when making a selection and making a hiring decision. So the Rooney Rule concept is where diverse slates had derived from within LinkedIn. And that is that intentionality and ensuring there is a diverse slate of talent that we are considering every time we hire. So that's what the Rooney Rule is. And I think that intentionality is really important. Understanding the total addressable market of where you're seeking to hire is critically important, and aligning your goals towards what is actually feasible, I think is what's very critical, and so I think for us at LinkedIn, we have that focal point at the on, but we also have the intentionality, as I mentioned, throughout. And so I think it's fundamentally important to understand, if you have a certain level of headcount open in a certain demographic area, what is the total addressable market within that area? And that would tell you kind of more immediately, do you need to expand your search? Will that expansion of search take longer time? Do we need to, modify our time to fill and come to an agreement, and so on and so forth? So I really think that the Rooney Rule kind of is an awareness for many of us to say, okay, the NFL was very intentional about ensuring that there was that diverse pool talent to consider. How do we take that and how do we apply it to who we are as an organization, and the intentionality that we're going to have? Diverse slates program, as I mentioned, is an example of that within LinkedIn. But I honestly think it needs to be authentic to your organization, right? To your targets of hiring, the total addressable market you seek, where you're geographically located, the span of your reach geographically, and all of those things. So when you're thinking about metrics and you're thinking about hiring goals, be very specific about doing your diligence and understanding what is actually feasible. Because if you say, okay, we want to hire X amount of people, and X percentage is going to be diverse, but you don't have that reach, you don't have the strategy around it, then you're not going to reach that goal ultimately. So doing your diligence up front and understanding what is actually possible. And then you have the other thing that I'll say is, look at your historical data. Look at how you've performed and how you've progressed, over a certain span of time, and then leverage that to be your milestone of how we want to progress. Again, allowing yourself. I was in another webinar, and it was a phenomenal term that was said. It is, a life-a-thon, meaning that this is something that is for life. This is a journey that we're on. You're not going to find and solve immediate. So understanding, like, what does that mean, and giving yourself that enough time and space. So I think that it is really important about that intentionality and matching up what is doable, what are you capable of, and then the milestones of progression, of progress. If you can progress and you set those milestones, then you're going to be, the key word there is progressing, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Lonnie. And I know we're coming up to 5 minutes, and and for all the other questions that were unanswered, feel free to kind of obviously reach out. We really appreciate that. And I am going to kind of do a little bit of a wrap up now. First of all, just want to say thank you, Lauren and Lonnie, both so much for sharing your story and insights on how LinkedIn helps recruit diverse candidates. I just want to say, on behalf of Fairy God Boss, we truly appreciate the partnership and helping LinkedIn with some of your diversity goals when it comes to recruiting women. I thoroughly enjoyed being part of this very important conversation, and really appreciate all of the information shared, and I'm sure our viewers do too. So before we kind of end, I'd like to kind of just share a special announcement based on kind of the reviews topic we just talked about, that since 2016, Fairy Godboss really has heard from thousands of women and compiled our famous Best Companies for Women awards. So today, for the first time, we are thrilled to announce here that our Best Companies for Women awards 2021 will be published on September 28th. We will be sharing some FAQs and a toolkit in the webinar follow-up, and we will also be sending the email along with that email so that you can all learn more about the free award and how to qualify. You will be getting the recording too. And again, please feel free to reach directly for any questions that were unanswered. And I really hope that everyone enjoyed this webinar today. I know I did. And I just want to say thank you again, LinkedIn. Thank you, Lauren, Lonnie, and thank you everyone for attending today.
Thanks for having us, Amiksha. It's been really fun.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone.
Good
Very
luck
much.
in your diversity recruitment journeys, everyone. We're
Absolutely.
all going to be great at this.
Go team. We got this. In it together.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.